Gong Qing Da Da Sing Ting 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗃 𝘃𝗵𝘃𝗃 Well, the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputoche. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, bai qian wan jie nan zhao yi. Wo jin qian wen de shou che, yan jie ru lai zhen shu yi. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back. This is class number 74, as we explore the Dharma using the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra as our foundation. Okay, let's recite Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Namo, quelling disasters, ending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, ending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. All right, while I'm changing slides, anyone has any questions or anything interesting to share? Yes, no, no, yes. Okay. All right, so where are we right now? Okay, let me adjust my desktop. And okay, we are still in the human realm. I'm going to just bypass this. Okay, we are still in the human realm, and we've talked about the 4 different continents and the different human beings and their different characteristics that found in the three other continents. Okay, and then so now we are going to. I'm not sure what we are going to look at applies only to human beings like ourselves in 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗺, or it also applies to the other three continents. I don't know. I think we just assume that it applies only to us. Okay, it makes it a lot easier, because whatever happens to the other beings doesn't really help us in our cultivation as well. Okay, so today we are going to look at it from the perspective of the Shurangama Sutra, and then later we're going to look at what Shufu has to say about being humans. Okay, so Shurangama Sutra, it says, if pure mental activity and their emotions are equal in strength, beings will neither soar nor fall. They will be born in the human realm. The brighter their thoughts, the greater their intelligence will be. The darker their emotions, the duller their wits will be. So this is coming back to the theme that the Shurangama Sutra has, that talks about how when a living being dies, the percentage between emotion and thought. Thought, you could say, is like seeing things in a rational way, almost like wisdom. And then emotion is non-rational. Emotion is pure feelings, pure karmic habits that you just uh, follow after. It's just emotion, raw emotion, more like an animal, which is why, if you remember, when we look at the animal realm, the difference between animal realm and human realm is that animals had the reason why they are reborn as animals. One of them is that they have a lot more emotion than thought. So humans are where it's 50-50. Yeah, we have kind of like almost like a balance, equal, not equal, but a balance of thought and emotion. Okay. So what the Shurangama Sutra also has is the Buddha explains how the various different kinds of animals get reborn as humans, and this is pretty interesting. So we'll just go through. It says, moreover, Ananda, suppose these beings, having been born as animals to pay the debts they incurred in previous lives, live longer as animals than their debts have required. I'm going to read this whole slide and I'm going to explain. It says, on that basis, these beings can now return to their original status as humans, and provided that their strength, their blessings, and their merit are sufficient, they can retain their human bodies as compensation for their overpayment of their karmic debt. But if the blessings are not sufficient, they will fall back into the realm of animals in order to make a direct payment of any other debts they owe. Excuse me. Okay, so what I think this means when Buddha says in the first paragraph, it says, live longer as animals than their debts have required. So they are born, a living being is born as an animal to pay back a particular debt. But due to whatever circumstances, they live longer than, and they pay back more than what was required of the debt. So that's what it means. So you overcompensate, in other words. Yeah. So because you have overcompensated, kind of like you generate more. It's not merit. Could be merit. I don't know. Kind of like a blessing. You get reborn as a person again to make up the difference. So it's very fair. Yeah. And how long you can stay as a human being depends on your particular strength, your blessings, and your merit. Yeah. And then once that's done, then if you still have outstanding debts to be repaid back, you will be reborn as an animal again to continue paying those debts back. So Shufu says there is no way to get off easy or cheat anyone out of anything. He says karma is very just, it's very fair. Shufu says although there isn't any actual person controlling the whole process, The power of one's karma is such that it does not allow any injustice. No one takes a loss unfairly. So everything's very fair. It's not like there's a God that's controlling everyone's fate, like how other religions think that there's someone who's responsible. In Buddhism, you are responsible. You plant your own seeds. You create your own fate. So I have a very interesting story. Some of you may have heard this before. It's a story that was written by a Thai monk many years ago. I think in the early 1900s. He used to be the abbot of a particular monastery. I don't have the right details, but if anyone's interested, I can find out. So this story is about a couple who were farmers. They were, I think, like a moderately wealthy family. The husband owned a lot of land. They had people working as farmers to farm their land. Husband was a nice person, apparently, but it was said that the wife was not. The wife was very stingy. She would take advantage of the workers, and she was so stingy that her own jewelry, her wedding jewelry that she received from her husband, she buried it under a particular tree in the field because she was afraid that people would steal it. That's how stingy she was. She was so stingy, she would deprive herself of the pleasures of her own possessions. So one day she died. And when she died, because she lacked any merit, the story says that she was reborn in the hell realm. But this hell realm was very interesting. In this hell realm, she described that there was a monk that came down to teach them the Dharma, and they could recite the sutras. And this monk is actually 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗃, the Thai equivalent of 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃. 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃 is always most usually depicted as a monk. Well, other traditions have their versions of 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃 as well. So not only she was able to learn the Dharma when she was in whatever lower realm she was born into, but when she died, her husband did a lot of good deeds on her behalf. The husband built dwellings for the monks and dedicated the merit to her. So this story said that the hell officials then told her, explained to her what the husband had did for her, and because of her own wholesomeness that she generated while she was in that realm, that that they would allow her, they would release her early, but on one condition. The condition is that she goes back to her husband to repay the husband's kindness, because it is a debt that she owed the husband, and she agreed. So she was reborn in a neighboring village, and I think when she was about 12 or 14 years old, she started remembering her past life, and she realized why she was there. So she told her family, she said, I need to go to this village because I'm so-and-so's former wife, and I have to pay my debt back to my former husband. And everyone thought she was crazy. Everyone thought she was nuts. They looked for a lot of people who practice like black magic. Who are they? I can't remember the term right now. In Malaysia, we call them bomos. So the family looked for a lot of these people to try to cure her, but they weren't successful. Until one day they got so fed up with her, they said, okay, we'll take, we have had enough of this. Let's prove this once and for all. And they brought her to the other village where she claimed her former husband was born. And when she was there, she said, okay, that's my old house. She went there, the husband was still alive, and she explained to her former husband, who also thought that she was crazy, because, how someone comes to you and say that your former son or daughter from a previous life or whatever, how would you, or they're your grandfather or great-grandfather who's been reborn. You would think they're crazy too. So anyway, why? Because we are ignorant. Because of our own lack of understanding, so okay. So to prove that she was the wife, she said, she told the former husband, she said, I will prove to you, if you dig under that tree, you will find the jewelry that you gave me during our wedding. So they dug under the tree, and sure enough, the husband recognized the jewelry. And from then on, she, although the former husband had taken another wife, which apparently didn't care too much about him, she became his caregiver for, I think, about 7 years, until the day he died. And when he died, the day after that, she was about 21 years old. She herself had a heart attack, and she passed away. So this story was recorded down by one of the monks who was around during that time. Shaman. Okay, Miss Yap says English equivalent is shaman. Yeah, like black magic. Someone who deals in black magic or something. Okay, so that's one story I have about, having debts and all that. Okay, let's continue with the Shurangama Sutra. So the Buddha says, Ananda, beings should realize that they should settle their debts, whether with money, goods, or labor, so that their indebtedness can naturally come to an end. But if during this process, beings take each other's lives or eat each other's flesh, then they may well continue through countless eons, killing each other and eating each other as if they were turning carelessly on a wheel. Now on top, now beneath. The wheel may never stop unless they undertake the practice of calming the mind, or unless a Buddha appears in the world. Okay, so the Buddha is warning everyone. It says, if you have any debts, or if you owe anyone anything, you should always, square the debt. Don't leave any outstanding debt, because if you do not, then the chance you create the conditions for being reborn as an animal to repay that debt. And it says to compound, not just that. It says not only if you have debts, but if you eat other living beings for your food, then the cycle that you create of revenge will just compounds the whole issue. Shufu says you get caught in a cycle that goes on for eons and eons, a cycle of eating and being eaten, of killing and being killed. It goes on like the turning of a wheel, and it's very, very hard to stop, because the killing of karma creates very, very strong feelings of animosity, or feeling that you have to take revenge, that is very, very hard to control. That's why it never stops. And I myself, I used to have a very naive view about karma. I used to think that, oh, okay, well, if, let's take the example of stealing. If I steal your pen, okay, and then either in this life or in the next life you steal the pen back, then it's square, then it's fair, right? And there's no karma anymore. But that's not really how it works. Okay, okay, an example would be like this: the stealing the pen. Okay, let's say I see a pen lying there, and I think it's my pen. I don't even have the intention of stealing the pen. I just think that, oh, that's my pen, and I take it. All right. The person who the pen belongs to sees me taking the pen and gets upset. They say, oh, the person just stole my pen. JinHe just stole my pen. How can he steal other people's things? He's not supposed to steal. He's taken the precept. So I wait. The other person waits, sorry. The other person waits for a suitable time, and he takes the pen back from me. And regardless of whether I see it, I see him taking the pen back from me, either in front of my face, or I don't, but I see him holding the pen later on, and I discovered that my pen is missing. He takes back the pen, he's satisfied. He says, this belongs to me, I'm satisfied. As far as he's concerned, it's fair. But when I see him with my so-called my pen, whether it belongs to me or not, I don't even remember. I feel that it's unfair because I say, hey, he has my pen. Why? Because I've probably forgotten. So as we go from life to life, we forget. But all that remains with us is the impulse to either cheat the person or to harm the person that remains. And because it's a very strong emotional response, we find it really, really hard to justify to ourselves why we must let go. Because until we let go, it will happen again. I will take his pen again, the next life, or another, or in this life, or another thing that belongs to him, or steal his money to justify the pen. And then he will do the same to me again because he feels that it's justified. So that's why it goes on in a circle. Okay? The debt is very, very hard to um, get rid of. Yeah. So one of the ways to understand cause and effect is to take responsibility for everything that happens to us. To tell ourselves that the Buddha taught us that nothing happens to us by chance. Everything that happens to us is a result of things that we have done before. So by understanding that, we learn how to let go. Because if we don't let go, then either in this life or next life, it still holds on to us and we are never free. We rely on the other person to let go. The other person is not going to let go. Chances of waiting for the other person to let go, unless he's going to become a sage soon, is very, very low. Only you can be responsible for yourself. So that's why the Buddha says that there are only two ways to escape the cycle of karmic debts. One is by stopping the mind until you in Shufu's case, she says that you realize the great Shurangama Samadhi, you become a sage. Or a Buddha appears in the world and explains your debt to you, or people's karmic debts to them. Then Shufu says both the debtor and the creditor understand that they should not continue to incur such debts, and in this way they can stop the endless cycle of I owe you, you owe me, and all that. So I have another story. Okay, I have only 2 stories today. So another story is this, to illustrate this. Some of you who have been to CDTB may know one of the residents. His name is Phil Hirsch. I think Phil might be in his 90s now. Interesting anecdote about Phil is that he learned how to sit in full lotus when he was about 80 years old. So that's Phil. Phil used to be a sound engineer. He has a music background, and musically he's kind of gifted. So he told me a story, Phil, a few years back. He said that he had a very bad relationship growing up with his mom, with his own mother. And his mother would blame him for things that were not his fault. He says, for example, during the old days, the TVs had antennas, and he said he remember whenever a plane would fly above his house, the reception would get disturbed from the plane. At least that's what he remembers. And his mom would blame him when that happened to the TV, and would hit him. So that's one instance of how his relationship with his mom was very terrible. And he felt like he always, in his heart, he of course he wasn't happy. And even as an adult, when he was in his, I think he had this when he was in his 70s, it stayed with him, this unhappiness, this dissatisfaction with his mother. Until one day, Phil is a meditator. He meditates a lot. So one day he had a state. In one of his meditation sits, he had this memory that he was he saw this old English town. How old? He said the street lamps had to be lit by hand. So maybe in the 1800s or earlier. And he saw this young woman carrying something. He was carrying a baby. approached a big house, and he knew that this house belonged to him. And the young lady knocked on the door, and the door opened, and another man answered, and he knew at once that he was the man who answered the door, and this young woman who knocked on the door was his daughter. And he saw this man slam the door in the young woman's face, and the young woman looking very dejectedly, very sorrowfully, very sad, had to walk away. And he recalled that his daughter, in this memory of his, this daughter had a child out of wedlock, and he was a famous composer, and he did not he did not want to be because to have a child out of wedlock at that time was considered a very taboo thing, and he did not, because of his reputation, he wanted to protect his reputation, and so he rejected his daughter. He renounced his daughter, and he also at the same time realized that his mother in this current life was his daughter from that life. So he immediately felt really bad, and at that time his mother was still around in a care home in Florida. So he flew to his mom, and he just told his mom that he's sorry, and he was able to forgive the mother for the way the mother treated him when he was growing up. Why? Because he had a kind of wisdom. He could see cause and effect, and he could see that the reason his mother treated him badly was the root of that came from him renouncing his own daughter. He was the one that was responsible. Okay, so that's a story of feel and cause and effect. All right, okay, let's continue on with the Shurangama Sutra. Oh no, next is the human realm from Shifu. Shifu talks about the human realm at this Dhamma talk was on June 7, 1988 in Calgary. And Shifu recounted a verse. It says, "For hundreds of thousands of years, the stew in a bowl has boiled up, a resentment deep as the sea and very hard to level. If you want to know why there are wars in the world, just listen to the cries from a slaughterhouse at midnight." Okay, hold on, just let me check my notes. Okay, Shifu. Okay, let me see. Just give me a second while I go forward and see. All right. Okay, so Shifu says, hatred of this kind cannot be easily resolved. I changed a few characters in the last two lines of the verse. If you want to avoid the disasters of water and fire in the world, everyone must stop killing living beings. Shifu said, in ancient times, people went to war with knives and spears, swords and pole arms, arrows and pikes. In modern times, people fight each other with guns, artillery, and atomic bombs. Guns and artillery belong to the fire element, whereas atomic bombs belong to the water element. Disasters of water and fire wouldn't exist if people never killed other beings. Not just human beings, okay, other beings. If people still kill other beings, then wars will never stop. Humans eat too many animals. People won't stop after eating one pig. They eat lots of pork. All the pigs that were killed will come to collect their debt at the same time. If you owe too many pigs, then you won't be able to repay them all. You may repay this one, but not that one, resulting in unfairness and consequently wars. We Buddhists must first get rid of our bad temper and then refrain from killing. Okay? All right, now getting back to the Shurangama Sutra. This part is very interesting because it talks about the transition from animals to humans. Okay, so the Shakyamuni Buddha says, now you should understand that when beings who have been owls have paid their debts, they will regain their human form and will be born among people who are pig-headed and stubborn. If you meet anyone who's stubborn, okay, So Shifu says not just owls, but it says any birds that are considered evil. So apparently owls are evil. So Shifu says once as animals, or in this case as this category of evil birds, have undergone their karmic retribution, they return to the original form as human beings, but they are corrupt and obstinate. So not just stubborn, but also corrupt. They become people who are totally perverse and hard-headed. They are stubborn and refuse to yield. They are totally unreasonable and unprincipled. Often, they become robbers and they don't listen to reason. If you try to explain some dharma to them, they will run away. Among those who are corrupt, obstinate means that they get together with such people like themselves. So that this category of people, according to the Buddha, comes from the past rebirth as evil birds or owls. And the Buddha continues, he says, when beings who have been animals that are considered to be ill omens have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and be reborn among people who are deformed. Okay. So what are ill omens? I only know, there's in some cultures they say, oh, black cat is considered evil, or a black goat, but I couldn't find. I looked through Shifu's commentary. I couldn't find what animals are considered to be ill omens. Anyway, Shifu says this category of animals, when they are born in the human realm, they are reborn as freaks, meaning sometimes people have born as babies are born with two heads, or two bodies but one head, or the organs are out of place, where the eyes are not where they're supposed to be, or the mouth are not supposed to be where they are, or they have more arms. The number of arms and legs are different from regular people. Shifu says this is what's considered as abnormal, and that usually most of them, when they're born in this state, they die pretty quickly. And yeah, so these are the people who are born from this category of animals. Shakyamuni Buddha also says this: when beings who have been foxes have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and will be reborn among people who are of lowly status and low intelligence. Okay, so in Chinese culture, the fox is regarded as being extremely intelligent, but Shufu says his intelligence is more like a ghostly kind of intelligence, and because of that, it is a false intelligence. So when he gets reborn as a person, he becomes a very simple person, a very dense kind of person. Shufu says you can say something to him over and over again, but he won't really understand. Yeah. Shufu says if you don't, he says this kind of person, if you don't interact with him, everything's fine. But as soon as you try to talk to him or you try to explain to him, then you realize that, Shu says he's completely out of it. He can't understand anything at all. I'm laughing because I know people like that. Okay. The Buddha continues saying, it says, when beings who have been venomous animals have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and will be reborn among people who are vicious. So, Venerable Master says that they haven't, even though they are reborn as humans, their bad habits remain. So they are still very cruel and fierce. They have a very angry temperament, and they have no hesitation about killing. And I guess that's because as venomous snakes, they don't really take heed of their actions. If you get in the way, they will bite. They bite first and talk later, kind of like that. Yeah. Remember we had that story about that giant, the bhikshu who had a great temper, and then he was reborn as the giant snake guarding the lake, and he would cause a lot of people trouble if they didn't pay him proper respects, if they wanted to cross the lake like that. And he knew what he was doing, but he couldn't really help himself because of his temper. So just like that, Shifu says, as people they continue along in that same kind of evil habit of killing people. They're very cruel and unreasonable, and their habits haven't changed since their lives as snakes. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. The Buddha says, when beings who have been parasitic worms have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and will be reborn among people who are menial workers. So this Shufu says are people you consider worthless. They work for other people. They do very menial tasks, and in the world they fall into the category of being very, very unimportant or insignificant people. This is the category of people. And then Shakyamuni Buddha says, when beings who have been animals of the kind that are eaten by people have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and will be born among people who are weak-willed and dependent. So Shufu says these people are very weak, they're very manipulable, they cannot manage on their own in the world, and they have to always rely on others for support. They also are usually very cowardly. I can kind of see this if you look at, say, how animals are led to slaughter, like cows. You know, they might have an idea of what's going on, but they kind of go along. You can control their actions. Yeah, so I guess that carries on when they're reborn as humans. The Buddha says, when beings who have been animals of the kind that serve people or of the kind that are a source of people's clothing have paid back their debts, they will regain their human form and will be reborn among human laborers. So Shufu says these are the animals whose skin are used for leather or the fur are used to make clothes, and they have to be obedient to human beings. When they're reborn as humans, they have to do very hard labor. Yeah. And then the next category is beings who have been migratory birds, have paid back their debts. They will regain their human form and will be reborn among people of refinement. Okay, so this is a slight twist. What are migratory birds? Birds who move from one place to another as the seasons change. So this would be something like wild geese, ducks. They are swallows. I don't. Yeah. Anyway, they are born among people of refinement. So people who seemingly have class. Shufu says, Shufu says they appear to be cultured, but it's just very this ability is very worldly. It's not exceptional. It's not that great. Shufu says, yeah. Okay. Okay. Next is people who were animals serving as good omens have paid back their debts. They will regain a human form and will be reborn among people who are intelligent. Okay, so this is not bad. But Shufu says that intelligence is not profound. It's just worldly intelligence that makes you very skilled in creating arguments, but it is definitely not wisdom. Okay. Then the next category is beings who have been domesticated animals. This will be the category of pets. Have paid back their debts. They will regain their human form and will be reborn among people who are accomplished. What are people who are accomplished? Shufu says people like this, they comprehend what's going on. They understand social graces, but they do not have a genuine and comprehensive understanding that penetrates the past and present. They are not that well educated. They simply attain a superficial kind of success in dealing with the world. So I guess these are people who normal people would say, oh, these are smart people. They know how to be businessmen, or they are smart in the fields of research and all that. Yeah, so in their past lives, I guess maybe they spend a lot of time with humans, being pets. So these are the humans they get reborn into. Okay, next slide. Buddha says, Ananda, all these people have paid their debts from previous lives and have regained their human form. Since time without beginning, They had been creating the karma that results from deluded scheming, and they had been taking turns killing and being killed. If they do not encounter a 𝗃𝗵𝗏 or a Buddha, or if they do not hear the true Dharma, then in the midst of the stress of entanglement with perceived objects, they will repeat this cycle of karma indefinitely, as the Dharma explains. These people are to be deeply pitied. Okay, the second paragraph, it says, in the midst of the stress of entanglement with perceived objects. What is that? It just means as we go about our daily lives. The entanglement with perceived objects is when our eyes see things, see forms, our ears hear sounds, we smell with our nose, we taste, we feel with our body, and our mind gets all this sensory input. That's what the Buddha means. So it says, without hearing, if we don't hear the Dharma as we go about our daily lives, there's so much affliction, there's so much confusion, there's so much ignorance that there's no way to get out of this cycle of karma. Yeah, it just happens over and over and over again until finally you tell yourself that enough is enough, life isn't all that great, and I'm going to put an end to being reborn over and over again and not being in control. Okay, so the next slide I have is from the Ten Dharma Realms, again from Shufu, but let me see the chat box. It says, brighter thoughts. What does brighter thoughts mean? I heard you say wisdom. Should we read more sutras? How do you gain wisdom? Yes, Ron, that's kind of brighter thoughts would mean thoughts that are wholesome, based on the 10 good deeds, based on the precepts, based on the teachings of the Buddha, which is the Dharma. And where to begin? Go and investigate the Noble Eightfold Path, because that outlines everything that one needs to get out of the cycle of rebirth. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Shufu, with the Ten Dharma Realms, the book called the Ten Dharma Realms, Shufu says they are both good and evil people. The way of man is harmony. People are harmonious beings who are capable of getting along with anyone. It says, however, those who become human beings are neither completely good nor completely bad. Beings who are completely good are reborn in the heavens, while those who are thoroughly bad become animals or hungry ghosts or fall into the hells. Okay. Shiva also says people have both merit and offenses. When a person's merit is greater than his offenses, he will be born into a rich and distinguished family. But one with small merit and heavy offenses will be born into a poor family. Between these extremes are 1,000 differences and a myriad distinctions. That means that what we see in life, there's so many. Everyone has their own individual conditions, their own circumstances, their own unique position in life. Yeah, that's what Shifu means. Human beings can ascend to the heavens or fall into the hells. If you do good deeds, you ascend. If you commit offenses, you fall. Other people cannot tell you to fall into the hells, make you a ghost, or cause you to become an animal. It is entirely up to you. What you create, you must endure. You must suffer the consequences of your own actions. So, if you're part of the WhatsApp group, we had some inquiries lately, and it is coincidental that this part is about taking responsibility for yourself. Only you, Shufu says, only you can be responsible for yourself. And what is being responsible for yourself? It is understanding right view, meaning understanding cause and effect. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. What I have next is a very interesting publication called The Debate of King Milinda, or King Milinda's Questions. Yeah. It is not Melinda that we have in our group. This Melinda is let me change the slide. Okay, this Melinda is 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗍𝗃. Who is this King Milinda? There are two. Okay, whether you get this from the Mahayana source or the Theravada source, there are two different stories about where he came from. But in our history, King Milinda was a king in the Iranian northern, the Kash, what's that area? In the northern Pakistani area, I guess, the Iranian area. My geography there is very bad. I'm sorry. And the period where he was king was about 200 years after Alexander the Great. So they consider him as a Bactrian Greek king. What that means, you have to go look it up yourself, because Kish, yes, Kish, in Iran. Thanks, Saha. Kush. So Saha knows about him. The Kush area, right? Saha? Yeah, if you know. Yeah, Kush or Kish. So he's from that time. And in the Mahayana, from the Mahayana perspective, who is King Milinda? Well, in his past life, when the Buddha was around, there was a time when the Buddha wanted some peace. So the Buddha went into the forest away from everyone else and sat down by a lake. And then there was this great elephant king who also had the same thought. He says, having my whole herd of elephants and little elephants is very disturbing. I yearn for some peace and quiet. So just like the Buddha too, he went and into the forest. So it just so happened he went to the same place where the Buddha was, and he saw the Buddha there. And I don't remember the details of the story, but kind of like they understood each other. And he paid his respects to the Buddha. He knelt down to the Buddha. I think he made some offerings to the Buddha as well. The same story also had, I think, a monkey. But in the account of King Milinda, the monkey is not featured in the story. But if you come across the story about an elephant and a monkey making offerings to the Buddha, it's probably the same. So, so the elephant made offerings to the Buddha, and the Buddha spoke some Dharma to the elephant. And then when the Buddha was ready to leave the area, the elephant cried. And the Buddha spoke Dharma for the elephant again, saying that if you want true peace and quiet, you have to, as an animal, you cannot achieve that. You get reborn as a human, and then you can practice. So the elephant was reborn as a human, and he became an ascetic. And then at the same time, another person, which eventually became a monk called Nagasena, who answered King Milinda's questions. He is the counterpart to King Milinda, was also an ascetic. I may have got him mixed up with the elephant. I'm sorry. I'll find the correct story and I'll share it. But these two people were ascetics together after the time of the Buddha, and one made a vow to become a king to protect people. The other made a vow to become a sage. And in their future lives, when they came back, one came back as a king, and right now we're going to explore his questions. And one came back as the sage Nagasena, who is an arahat, who answers his questions. So this book exists in two forms. There is the Mahayana version. They're very, very similar, but they share different titles. Yeah, it's a very, very popular book in the Theravada. It's very interesting because it's questions asked about, it's questions that people like ourselves would ask, you know. And what did he ask? Okay, talking about being human. So this is the question he asked Venerable Nagasena when he first met Venerable Nagasena. He says, "How is your reverence known, and what, sir, is your name?" So Nagasena said, "O king, I am known as Nagasena, but that is only a designation in common use, for no permanent individual can be found." So for those of us who think that being a human is so great, or you're attached to being a human, pay attention, okay? So Venerable Nagasena says, oh, that's just my name. But if you look for who actually is Nagasena, you can't find anyone. So the king called upon the Bactrian Greeks and the monks to bear witness. He wanted an audience because this king was very smart. This king was known as one of the smartest people at the time, and all the other teachers of all the different religions at the time could not answer his questions. So it would not be wrong to say that this king was very, very confident of himself. So he called an audience, his entourage. He says, this Nagasena says that no permanent individual is implied in his name. Is it possible to approve of that? Okay, so he wants the he's trying to see if this Venerable Nagasena is as great as people say, because Venerable Nagasena already had a reputation by then. Then he turned to Nagasena and said, if most Venerable Nagasena that is true, who is it who gives you robes, food, and shelter? Who lives the righteous life? Or again, who kills living beings, steals, commits adultery, tells lies, or takes strong drink? If what you say is true, then there is neither merit nor demerit, nor is there any doer of good or evil deeds and no result of karma. If, Venerable Sir, a man were to kill you, there would be no murder, and it follows that there are no masters or teachers in your order. Okay, so this is his questioning to Venerable Nagasena. He says, if you say there's no one, then, who gets the karma? Who is it? How do you get your robes if no one, there is someone who gives it to you? That's his counter argument. Then he further questions. He says, now what is that Nagasena? Is it the hair? Maybe the monk had some hair, although monks have no hair. So he said, I don't say that, great king, came the reply. And he said, is it the nails, teeth, skin, or other parts of the body? Nagasena says, certainly not. He says, or is it the body, or feelings, or perceptions, or formations, or consciousness? Is it all of this combined? Or is it something outside of them that is Nagasena? So the Venerable Nagasena said, it is none of this. So the king said, ask, he says, then ask as I may, I can discover no Nagasena. Nagasena is an empty sound. Who is it we see before us? It is a falsehood that your reverence has spoken. So he says you are lying, basically. Then or you are not speaking, not lying. You're not speaking logically, or what you say makes no sense. Then, so Venerable Nagasena now questions the king. He says, you, sir, have been reared in great luxury as becomes your noble birth. How did you come here? By foot or in a chariot? The king said, in a chariot. And then he says, then explain, sir, what that is. Is it the axle, or the wheels, or the chassis, or the reins, or the yoke that is the chariot? Is it all of this combined, or is it something apart from them? So the king replied, it is none of these things, venerable sir. Then the monk says, then sir, this chariot is an empty sound. You spoke falsely when you said that you came here in the chariot. You are a great king of India. Who are you afraid of that you don't speak the truth? Then he called upon the Bactrian Greeks and the monks to bear witness. This king Milinda has said that he came here in a chariot, but when asked what it is, he is unable to show it. Is it possible to approve of that? Then the 500 Bactrian Greeks shouted their approval and said to the king, get out of that if you can. So he turns the tables on the king. The strategy that the king employed, getting an audience to back him up in trying to embarrass or to find out what Venerable Nagasena was about, and the style of questioning, the principles or the logic that he used is now thrown back at him. And okay, so let's see what he says. He says, venerable sir, I have spoken the truth. It is because it has all these parts that it comes under the term chariot. Then the venerables said, very good, sir, your majesty has rightly grasped the meaning. Even so, it is because of the 32 kinds of organic matter in a human body and the 5 aggregates of being that I come under the term Nagasena. as it was said by Sister Vajra in the presence of the Blessed One, just as it is by the existence of the various parts of the word chariot is used, just so it is that when the aggregates of being are there, we talk of a being. So in other words, Nagasena says, yes, King, you have understood. A chariot is nothing more than all these individual things put together. It's a conditioned thing. The chariot is a conditioned thing. It's not something by itself. So he applies the same to himself. He says, you take the 32 kinds of organic matter. What are they? Skin, nails, hair, the teeth, the bones, the various liquids in the body make up all 32. If anyone's interested in the full list of the 32, go look up the Abhidharma, and there's a part there that a section there that monks use to contemplate the body for what it is. So it lists down these 32 things. And the 5 skandhas, it says, the coming together of all this is what makes the term Nagasena. But if you remove them and you look at them individually, there is really nothing there at all. So the king was very impressed. He says, most wonderful Nagasena, most extraordinary that you have solved this puzzle, difficult though it was. If the Buddha himself were here, he would approve of your reply. So he's so confident that of his own intelligence, he says that the Buddha would also approve of Venerable Nagasena's reply. So that's how we should look at ourselves. We shouldn't get attached to what we think is that makes us us. Okay, so there are other encounters. I'll just share a few along the same lines. There's another encounter that the king asks about when you get reborn. Actually, what happens is same. So he says, he who is reborn, Nagasena, is he the same person or another? So the answer is neither the same nor another. So it says, give me an illustration. So remember, Nagasena says, in the pot of a milk that turns first to curds, then to butter, then to ghee, it would not be right to say that the ghee, butter, and curds were the same as the milk, but they have come from that. So neither would it be right to say that they are something else. So this is the way he explains what happens to all of us when we get reborn. So you can't say that the curd or the butter or the ghee, you can't call it milk anymore because it's no longer milk. But you can't also say that it didn't come from the milk because it did come from the milk, but it's now something else. So in the other versions of this, the Venerable Nagasena gave a few more examples of this. One of the examples he gave is this. Let me see. Let me look for the right one. Maybe I'll keep this for the next slide. But how we can understand this is, okay, if you've ever observed a group of very young children playing together, so children that are young enough where they are straightforward, that means they don't know how to scheme yet, meaning they don't know how to adjust their behavior depending on what's going on. So what you see is more or less their unfiltered reactions. You will see that these children all have usually very different personalities, very different characters, not just physically, but their personalities are different. They have different instincts. They have within them, they have inherent likes and dislikes. There are some things they like, some things they don't like, and they are different for every one of them. Their intelligence is different. Their traits are different. Some are more generous, some are very stingy. And so these are the traits that carry on from in the example of like when milk turns to butter or to ghee, to curds or cheese, same thing. What carries on from when we get reborn are just our karmic habits that we plant. It is no longer the same but it is a result of the seeds that we plant. So the next slide has this a bit more clearly. 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗃, in another session, he also asked, he says, what is reborn? And the answer comes back, mind and matter. Okay, what is mind and matter? Mind and matter is another way of saying name and form. What is name or mind? These are everything that happens intellectually in our mind, okay? And then even feelings, okay? And then what is matter? Matter is form, whatever that exists either visibly or that can be sensed. For example, whatever physical thing in front of you, that's matter or form, okay? What you can smell, you can't see, smell, it may not have the kind of physical form, but you can definitely detect smells. So that's also considered a form. Okay, so that's mind and matter. So Venerable Nagasena says mind and matter gets reborn, meaning when you're reborn, you have a body and you have your consciousness. And then the king says, is it this very mind and matter that is reborn? That means, is it the same person that gets reborn? And Venerable Nagasena says, no, it is not. But by this mind and matter, deeds are born, and because of those deeds, another mind and matter is reborn. But that mind and matter is not thereby released from the results of his previous deeds. So the king is probably confused by this. He says, give me an illustration. Okay, so what Venerable Nagasena just replied, he says, but by this mind and matter, deeds are born. He says, let's look at ourselves. It is by us right now that we create deeds or we create karma. And it is because of this karma that we create, in the future, another mind and matter is reborn. And that mind or matter has to undergo the seeds that we plant. That's why he says that that mind and matter is not thereby released from the results of his previous deeds. So that mind and matter that's going to be reborn is a result of the seeds that we plant now. That's what he's saying. Okay, so good for us that the king asks for illustration, so we can understand better. So Venerable Nagasena uses this simile. He says, it is like a fire that a man might kindle, and having warmed himself, he might leave it burning and go away. Then if that fire were to set light to another man's field, and the owner were to seize him and accuse him before the king, and he were to say, Your Majesty, I did not set this man's field on fire. The fire that I left burning was different to that which burned his field. I am not guilty. Would he deserve punishment? Okay, you all follow? You light a fire, okay, and then you are not responsible and you just leave the fire alone. The fire spreads and destroys another person's field, and you claim you are not responsible because the fire that you started was small, you know, and the fire that destroyed the man's field was big, and it's not the same fire. That's your argument, okay? So he asked the king, he says, would he deserve punishment? And the king says, indeed, yes, because whatever he might say, the latter fire resulted just from the former one. So Venerable Nagasena said, just so, O king, by this mind and matter, deeds are born, and because of those deeds, another mind and matter is reborn, but that mind and matter is not thereby released from the results of his previous deeds. So the big fire resulted from the small fire and was a direct consequence of the small fire. That's what it means. Okay. Good for us that, you know, if you, like me, still have a bit of confusion, Venerable Nagasena actually gave quite a lot of examples for people to understand. And one of the examples that he gave was, I found very interesting. I don't have it on a slide, so I'll just read it. He says, it is similar to a person who steals another person's fruit. So this person steals a fruit from a tree and then gets arrested. But when he gets arrested, he says that, oh, I didn't steal anything because this fruit doesn't belong to the person. He says that person, all he did was he just planted the seed. You know, he didn't plant the fruit, he just planted the seed. So how can I steal his fruit? Because the fruit doesn't belong to him. Only the seed belongs to him. How can I be a thief? So I'm not at fault. So that's the argument that is used. So the king says, no, the person is at fault. Why? Because first of all, you are stealing something, meaning taking something that you do not have the right to, taking something that does not belong to you or given to you, number one. Number two, the only reason that the fruit came to be is because the person planted the seed. Because he planted the seed, roots started to grow, and because the roots grow, a tree sprouted, and because the tree sprouted, there came to be fruits. So the fruit rightly belongs to the one who planted the seed. So, Venerable Nagasena said, yes, a person who is reborn is similar to that. By means of doing good and evil in this life, with this current name and form, is the root for a new name and form to be reborn in the next life. But that takes the karma from this previous life. Yeah. So all of us who are suffering right now, why? Is because someone, us but not really us, before, created the conditions for our lives right now. And the person who suffers, well, in terms of consciousness, if you don't want to suffer again, then you better be very careful to create only wholesome conditions for the future. So you may not be the same you, but the feeling of suffering is still the same. Just like a dream. When you wake up, in your dream, you still suffer, although when you wake up, you realize that, oh, it was just a dream. Same kind of principle. Okay, any questions? Is it too confusing? I hope not. Anyone? Okay, while we're waiting, if there are any, I wanted to announce that my intention is to always take a break every maybe 3 or 4 months, and it's been 4 months since I last had my a retreat for myself, and so I'm going to take a break for 4 weeks. So the next class that we will have will be on so today is Sunday, 1, 2, 3, 4, will be on the 8th of April, March, April, May, will be the 8th of May. So I'll send out an announcement that we'll be taking a break of a month and that we will resume on the 8th of May. Is that okay? Should I adjust if there are any other events going on? Okay, if there are, we can always communicate on the WhatsApp chat. All right. Okay, let's transfer merit. Let me end this slideshow. Okay, let me change my sound settings. All right, I'm going to invite everyone to put our palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows. 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. All right, everyone. We will see you in 1 month's time. Not next week, but 1 month's time. Okay. But the WhatsApp group will still be happening. If you have any questions, anything to share, please do so. Okay. All right, everyone. 阿弥陀佛.
感恩法师。